everyone, and welcome. I'm joined today by Stacey Vokrot-Mello from Cargill. She's here to talk to us a little bit about BPM. Welcome, Stacey.
Thanks so much for having me, Madison. Good to be with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear a little bit. I know you're speaking at our upcoming conference, and we get a lot of questions around BPM, how to set up a program. Do you have a toolkit, a playbook, something like that? So I'm excited to hear a little bit about what you have to share with us today.
Right.
Before we jump in, can you tell us a little bit about your role at your organization, just so we can have a little bit of foundation before we jump into some questions?
Sure. So I currently serve in one of our enterprises, which is our Food Solutions and Bioindustrials Group. And my role is ERP Excellence Lead. On a global basis, we're a global business. And really what that is intended to do is make sure that the technology investments that we are making, we're getting value to be returned from that. And as most people know, when you're taking on a big transformation effort, there's a lot of change management, new roles, new ways of working, and making sure that we adopt and apply the methodology and, again, get the most from that investment that we're making.
Great. So jumping into some questions here, what do you consider the most important component of BPM?
Well, I thought about this question, and I really find this to be, Madison, the most important is to have an unrelenting belief in business process management and a persistent passion to bring it to life in your organization. And here's what I mean by that. So my career has spanned more than 35 years. I've spent a good deal of time in process improvement across a variety of teams, taking a look at big challenges and small challenges. And one of the things that oftentimes results in working in that space is bringing a group of stakeholders together, trying to figure out where are we today, where are we going, what are the milestones, and how we're going to deliver value. And what I wish I had earlier in my career is a real good understanding of the holistic approach of business process management. Because what I have found later on in my career, utilizing business process management, is it's a great opportunity and way to engage stakeholders early, get them aligned around a common way of thinking and a language that everybody can utilize, and the ability to create content and assets that can be leveraged by a wide community. So avoiding a lot of the rework that maybe earlier in my career I was finding myself doing. So it's really understanding those business process management concepts, not only the 7 tenets, but also the process management piece. How do we make sure it's strategically relevant? What's our talent going to look like? What's the process life cycle? If I understood that earlier in my career, I think we would have gotten a lot farther faster, but grateful to have it today. The second piece that I would say is that passion piece. As most of us know, as process practitioners, this body of work is not easy. Sometimes we meet a lot of resistance. And just to be able to have that passion and understanding of what BPM is, and the value that it can bring to your organization. It's just about leaning in and driving it because you have that belief that it can add tremendous value to your organization. And the third piece that I would mention is when you do think about the 7 tenets and the importance of those, I really think in front of our minds as practitioners need to have that mindset of strategic alignment. This cannot be something that sits on the side. I've certainly talked to people in our organization that often look at business process management as an add-on, something that, okay, you're asking me to do something else. I already have a busy day. I have a full plate. I don't want to have to necessarily do something differently. But understanding how that strategic alignment can help and how you hook business process management into something that already exists and is ongoing in the organization, I've found super helpful. We are continuing to be become a process-focused organization. And we are starting to see that applying business process management to, again, our most strategic initiatives and our biggest opportunities for improvement is really driving the efficiency and effectiveness across our teams and really is helping us deliver better business performance at the end of the day.
You talked about some resistance there, and it's important to not have process management work be a side gig. So, what do you do when you see this resistance, and where do you see the most resistance when it comes to process management?
Well, what I've seen, and we have a big organization to turn and lots of stakeholders to manage. But when I think about the resistance from our stakeholders, it really starts with not being clear or understanding what business process management is, what the impact can be, and the ability, if the organization were to adopt it, to help ease the achievement of its business or strategic goals. Listen, I'm going to tell you firsthand, I'm not a big change person. I think all of us like our way in which we go about our business, where we park when we come into the office, the foods we eat, the activities that we engage in. But what's interesting to me, Madison, is the willingness, and perhaps unknowing willingness, that people have to continue to do work the way they've always done work, even though it can be complex or frustrating. And so I think introducing business process management as a new way of approaching our biggest challenges is certainly something that's helping us across our company. How we started to really address the resistance that we had is starting really small and simple. We had a community of process leaders that we just started to engage in a conversation. And conversations don't necessarily feel threatening. Hey, you want to hear what I'm working on? Let's get together as a community and figure out what our starting point is. And through those conversations, we realized that, hey, we have some challenges to overcome. Perhaps we're not all speaking the same language. Perhaps we've got issues that a business process management approach or a better understanding of how to apply some of those principles might really help. And so we started small, like I said, a conversation, figured out where there was an appetite and interest to go somewhere, and we started on our journey. And one of the things that we did in partnership with APQC, and super grateful for this, is an early partnership about establishing that language and using that process classification framework. In Cargill, we already had a taxonomy that we were utilizing, but certainly there were improvements that we could make to that. That was one of our first steps, because to get people to talk in the similar language, to be able to chalk a field so everybody understands, okay, well, what lane am I in and who has accountability for what, was super helpful for us. The second piece is around change management. And of course, that's one of the 7 tenets as well. Yeah. And we are really blessed here at Cargill to have an internal group of change practitioners that partner alongside our process practitioners and who have a change methodology that we can leverage in the work that we do day in and day out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very helpful, I'm sure. Now, you talked about creating a center of excellence, and I heard that you have also created a BPM playbook. Can you tell me a little bit about what led you to create that playbook?
Absolutely. And I don't want to give too much away, because that, of course, is what we're going to be talking about at the conference. Exactly. And super excited about that. But yes, the playbook that we designed was really to support what we affectionately refer to as our 350. So 350 process practitioners across the company that really were trying to move mountains, that do all sorts of creative, interesting, and value-enabling work. But we didn't necessarily have a consistent or common way of doing that. And so again, getting back to the discussions, getting back to that first engagement with APQC of taking a look at the framework and how do we build from there, we thought to ourselves, hey, APQC has a ton of content. We started educating and informing people around the 7 tenets of business process management, and we really started to drill that in and share a lot of the content that APQC has across that community. And we wanted to create something that no matter where you were of those 350 people, the multiple businesses that we have under the umbrella of Cargill, no matter where you were in your maturity, you could find something to grab a hold of. So maybe you didn't necessarily need something on strategic alignment, but you already had some metrics in place and you were trying to figure out what your performance was. Well, there's insights in the playbook that you can leverage and utilize. And so what we tried to do is just chalk a field. Again, basis of the 7 tenets. And no matter where you were, you could find something, small nuggets that you could grab a hold of and accelerate your process maturity journey. The other thing that we wanted to do is adopt a consistent way of looking at business process management. As I went across and leveraged a lot of external resources, most of them had a very similar structure and all pretty much contained those 7 tenets in some form or fashion. And so we knew that was a great place to start for our user community. And we have found that people have just really embraced it. And we're already seeing suggestions on how we can develop our second version of it coming up here this summer.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. So you mentioned being process focused or not being process focused earlier. So tell me again, would you consider your organization to be process focused?
So I think we aspire, Madison, to be process
Don't
focused.
we all?
Yeah, probably we all do. But we're certainly on the journey to getting there. But I would describe perhaps Cargill in its totality, and again, it's a very large organization, 150,000 people, multiple countries, multiple businesses. Everybody's on a different spot in their journey. But largely, I think we're more of a process thinking organization. Like I said, we've got 150,000 people. Our functional silos have a pretty big stronghold in the organization. And oftentimes over the last several years, we've been talking about tilting our organization to its side so we can run those end to ends and understand the handoffs. I think today we're doing a much better job of that than even just a couple of years ago. And I still think that we are in the throes of really doing some basic documentation of how our business operates, familiarizing not only our practitioner community, but our business partners. This is the way that we've designed our processes and the way in which we're performing our activities, that our employees are engaged in, servicing our customers, and exploring really ways in which we can continue to improve those processes. So I do think, like I said, we're on the journey for that. And a couple of things that are accelerating our journey, Madison, is really around the elevation of expectations from our most senior leaders. We're hearing them talk about process more frequently and more deliberately, which of course fuels the passion and excitement of our practitioner community. We've certainly seen where we've had value erosion. So I talk about the transformation journey that we've been on, technology deployments that maybe we haven't realized the full value from. Those value erosion experiences afford us an opportunity to maybe think differently in the future. And that's all been around being more process-led in our organization. And I also think we've seen disparate ways of working, which has implicated the way in which we deploy some of our technology. And so all of this coming together, expectations from the top of the house, some of the work that we're doing from bottoms up, like I said, is really accelerating us to move more towards that process-focused organization. But again, I would describe us more as process thinking at this point in time.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I like how you talked through the accelerators there. I like that a lot. So moving on to a little bit more general topic on PPM, looking at professional development for process professionals, how did you yourself evolve into a PPM professional?
Yeah, so probably by accident or by chance. So I've had a more than 35-year professional professional career. And like I said, very early on in my journey, I found myself leading cross-functional teams. And like I said, I wish I knew about BPM back then,
Yeah.
but I didn't. But as I thought about, preparing for this interview, all of those cross-functional leadership opportunities were really about connecting what we as practitioners call end to end. I didn't call it that back then, but that's really what it was. And taking into account various points of view from those different functional perspectives to try to drive towards a future state that was simplified, harmonized, standardized, easier to execute, and easier for us to serve our customers. And so I think, like I said, it's really about having cross-functional leadership experience and then trying to explore avenues and ways to bring that more holistically to life and sustain what was at the time projects and programs, but sustain that new way of working for the long term, which of course business process management can absolutely support. So I have been a champion of business process management and a practitioner for quite a number of years. And I really think that, working in business process management, working in cross-functional roles and opportunities has just been dynamic and exciting, certainly with its challenges, but I recommend it to anybody, really.
And it gives you a little bit better insight to then make process suggestions too. Having more knowledge over what this business unit is doing, or this business unit, then gives you that, I feel like, a good foundation to then make those opportunity suggestions.
Well, absolutely. And I also think it's this balance of recognizing that we are not necessarily an expert, in that functional silo. And you have experts that you have to call upon, but it's how do you stitch all this together in an ecosystem? Because we all recognize end-to-end processes, the way we get orders out the door, if you're manufacturing something or servicing your customers, or even performing a service, if you're a service organization. It's all about stringing those activities together in a way that is easily understood and can be performed. So yeah, it's about the ecosystem view, and I've enjoyed it.
That's good to hear. What is one piece of advice you would give to organizations just starting out on their process journey?
Yes, and honestly, that's where we were just a few years ago, believe it or not. I think it's about, being true and acknowledging where you are and taking that first step. And the first step does not need to be huge or big. Like I said, it could be just, okay, who are the people of process? And I know APQC has done several articles and webinars around, the people of process. Who are the people of process in your organization? Could be 2 of you, could be 20 of you, 200 of you. But even if it's 2, come together. Like, what are the problems that we're seeing? Where do we start? You can't do everything at once. Again, if I look at Cargill, we have a very large organization, thousands of things happening at once. But try to ring fence it. Try to find where there's an appetite to do something. Like I said, we started with the process classification framework concept because we recognized, hey, we already had process leaders in place. They had accountabilities and ownership for things in their wheelhouse, but perhaps those classifications of bodies of work were colliding with one another. Perhaps we had overlaps. And so we really felt like we needed to chalk the field, and we had to have a common language that we can all be speaking as we proceeded to do our work. You can start with something like that. You can just get, meetings together once a week, once a month. What are we tackling? Let's review one of the 7 tenets. Which one of those would be most applicable or meaningful or relevant to where we are today? You do not need to do everything at once. We didn't. And I will also tell you, in our planning for the launch of business process management at Cargill, we had to pivot a couple of times. What we started with at the beginning of the year, we maybe didn't prioritize or retain as a priority at the end of the year. because there were so many other things going on. And that's another thing. You've got to integrate this with other strategic choices and initiatives that are underway in your organization. But like I said, start small. You can scale fast and work with what you have. Don't fight it. Work with what you have and move it forward in a way that's meaningful and relevant to you.
So two parts that I really liked that you said there was the start small. It doesn't have to be a big initiative. You can start with small baby steps along the way. And the other part was setting the scope to what your process improvement or your initiative is going to be, because if you don't know where you're starting or ending, then there's no way you can launch it out to your organization. They'll be just as confused as you are along the way. So I really liked that.
Right.
Thank you for sharing a little bit about your upcoming session as well as the BPM program at Cargill. I'm excited to have you here in Houston May 1st and 2nd for our conference, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Well, thanks so much for the opportunity, Madison. Look forward to seeing you.
That was our discussion with Cargill's Stacey Vokrot-Mello. She shared a little bit about the BPM program, the initiative she's working on in her organization. If you would like to learn more about business process management, be sure to visit APQC's website, www.apqc.org.